Is he here? Welcome to KimAppa. Jarrod and Robbie are here again to talk cricket as we do every week. Robbie has been absolutely everywhere. He's SA20ing. He's in Dubai at the moment. He'll be in India in 8 minutes' time. Proper global jet setter. But I believe, Robbie, after my many times of ambushing you, there's something that you want to show to me.
I'm not ambushing you. I'm actually doing something that will please you. You'll probably have a good laugh about this. Throw it on. You know who that is?
No, is that Malachi Jones?
No, it's this player called Kamau Leverok.
Oh, is that the son?
Kamau Leverok, his nephew.
No way.
And Kamau Leverok is playing in the same side as me in a T20 league that's coming up over the next couple of weeks.
You're kidding me.
So when I saw the Leverok name as in the list, it's right below my name.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I gotta show this to Jarrod. This will be fun.
That is absolutely crazy. So you're gonna be, so what league is this one? The
It's called the Legends Pro T20 or something.
You have to
Legends
do
Pro
a whole
T20.
thing where like you literally get him, because how old would he have been? He might not have even been born when.
He was born 1994, so he.
Oh,
must
okay.
have
So
been
he's old
13
enough
years
to
old.
know. Oh,
Yeah, 100%.
that is crazy.
So-
Have you met Dwayne since it all happened?
No.
I suppose you don't spend all that much time in Bermuda.
Don't say it now. We might just.
Combox Bermuda coming soon to a TV near you. That's absolutely incredible. I can't wait for that, man. Well, you have to do something around that. There has to be some sort of
100%. Like I don't think you let me sleep if I didn't do something around it.
I will write a script for both of you. Don't worry about that. Oh, that's absolutely perfect. We're going to talk about something slightly different today. Something more serious. Weirdly enough, you haven't seen this piece yet, so I won't make you talk about it too much. But I've been working for the last couple of months on this piece on David Boone's drinking record. You're aware of the David Boone drinking record, right? Like when
Wasn't
I say
it was a flight from Australia to England where he had 60 cans of beer or something like that?
52 cans of beer
52
was
cans of
how
beer.
many he went through. I say unofficially, let's put it that way. Not quite a Guinness World Record. It's a story that one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it is forget the unlikely elements of it and how much he would have gone to the toilet. But I did work out the science of how often he would have had to go to the toilet, Robbie. It was quite a lot. I even looked into the dehydration. I even looked into because if you drink 52 cans of beer, do you know what you end up doing? Going to the toilet a lot. And I wanted to show just how often. And also, you sweat a lot on planes. Long story. The point being is that is a
Not
story
necessarily.
No, you do.
You do get dehydrated.
You seep out a lot of liquid from yourself. So it's a combination of sweat and the way that you get dehydrated on a plane. I'm not going to take you through the full scientific articles that I read on this, but I did spend a lot of time trying to work out exactly how much liquid would have evaporated from his body without him going to the toilet. That's the kind of work we do on Combox, Robbie. We go all the way in. The point being is that is a story to this day that is still glorified and is still talked up, despite the fact that if he really did it, he put himself into a position where he could have died drinking that much alcohol, right? And fair to say to David Boone over the years, he's always pretty much denied that this actually happened. And he had a few beers is the way I think he explained it. But this has come into the world a little bit more this week because obviously the Harry Brook incident in New Zealand of the night before the game and everything that was going on with Harry Brook and being drunk and the bouncer. No, it was in New Zealand when he was captaining the New Zealand against New Zealand in the one day. That was the actual bouncer event. Obviously, we had Ben Duckett a while back as well.
That's what I thought. That was more recent, wasn't it?
The Ben Duckett one was between the second and third test.
I think second and third test. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's been lots of stories, and someone actually asked me this: why all these stories come out when you lose? And I was like, partly because like it's hard for the press when you're winning to like suddenly be like, oh, but they're also all drunk all the time. Like it just doesn't really work. But the other thing is that once everyone loses, everyone kind of turns on each other and starts leaking all this sort of stuff. And fans specifically keep onto this stuff and then suddenly release it. But I thought the bigger conversation, I thought this is going to be really interesting with you is I want to know about the drinking culture within cricket, right? And I thought, I know, you'll have your own thoughts on this, but it is really more of a Western cricket culture,
It is,
right?
yeah.
Than an
it
Asian
is.
cricket culture. What is it like for someone who's not used to that level of drinking to suddenly be around all that stuff as a professional? Like, when was the first time you sort of started to realize that, oh, wow, this is a whole different world to the cricket I grew up in?
So it was not a part of our culture. It's never been a part of our culture ever.
There's a
I
couple
think
of
even if
drinkers
we,
from Asia, but not
yeah,
nothing.
there are.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's going to be, you're going to have an outlier
And
in every system.
and a lot of them also become drinkers later on when they've played county cricket or club cricket in other places, right? Like it quite often comes
Yeah.
from that, doesn't it?
Yeah, but also say, I tell you, say if it's Ranji Trophy, it's first class cricket. Even if someone's having a drink, then because it's not a part of the culture, they have it quietly. You know,
Yeah.
they have it by themselves, or they have it with a couple of teammates, and they don't make a big thing about it, or it's not out in the open, so to speak. It's more like, I feel like having a glass of beer today. Post a long day of fielding, yeah, I'll have one.
Yeah.
Again, if you're batting the following day, then you try not to have it. There's a lot of things that a lot of athletes follow. I actually didn't drink till I was like, whilst playing, I didn't drink till I was about 26, 27. That's when I actually started drinking. And so
You didn't drink at all in your life until you were 26.
no, because it was like, I've had, like, I've tasted stuff. I've never
Yeah.
really had a drink in a way where, like, okay, I really want to have a drink, and let's have a drink tonight, or some stuff like that. Or let's go out partying and let's have some drinks. That was just not me. But post 27, 28, I felt like I needed it to the extent where I needed one day or like 2 days in a year where I just kind of let go and did it more of a let go exercise. So after playing the whole season, when the IPL would get over, at the end of the IPL, the last day of the IPL, right, before we dispersed, the day before we all dispersed back to our homes, we would all go out for a drink, or the team would go out for drinks, and then that would be the day when I would, go and have drinks and have as much as a good time as possible. And if we're doing it as a team, then we do it as a team. If we do it as a group of players, we do it as a group of players. There isn't a sense of like bonding over it, because you have to understand the complexities of the game when I'm saying this, right? It is a deeply insecure sport. Cricket is a deeply insecure sport, right? It is as much an individual sport as it is a team sport. So you always almost have your guard up, right? At least in the ecosystems that I've played in, this competition is so high that you almost always have your guard up. So one of the ways to drop your guard down, and like whether you like it or not, is you have a couple of drinks, then your guard drops down, right? And then you meet as, not as athletes, but as humans. So there's a sense of camaraderie that's built in those ecosystems, but I think they have to be like, I don't know, almost curated. I remember when we won the Ranji Trophy in 2013, 14, when we qualified for the knockouts, and which we had done even before that. But this time when we qualified to the knockouts, we're like, let's celebrate it. So we all came together. We met at one of the team members' house, and we all had a drink together. And we all had a great time together. We had fun. We played music, drinking. There was shisha that was going on, and just everyone had a great time. And the like, we really bonded as a team, right? Because all those guards dropped down, and the camaraderie just kind of came through. And then suddenly we're talking about the game, we're talking about the match, good things about the match, the bad things about the match, what people did well, good, what people didn't do very well. And then the conversation started flowing very honestly. And that kind of built a bond in our group, that after the semis also we celebrated. And then after the finals also we celebrated, which was insane, right? And there's a sense of uh, bonding that brings out amongst men, at least, because your guards drop off. But it's not an active part of a culture. It was frowned upon a lot growing up. Like you couldn't do it in public. It had to be done behind closed doors. Mm. And for me, when I went to Australia, I remember going to Australia in 2003-4. I went to the Karnataka team. Bro, they drink like it's water, man. I had a friend who was my neighbor who also used to play tennis. He moved to Australia and he studied there for a fair bit. And whilst he was there, he started enjoying his beer, and for him, like beer became like water. Like every day he'd have like 3 or 4 pints, and it's like, yeah, this is just part of who I am now. And that wasn't foreign to me, because I saw that as well in the Australian cricket culture. Because for them, having a drink post the game,
Well,
you have an IC there all the time, right?
Yeah, I wondered if it was like, because you would have grown up around a bunch of Australian coaches at times, right? And I would have assumed that is the first time you sort of saw that culture come in, would have been with the coaches.
No, I saw it with the players. I saw it with in Australia and Brisbane, when we went to play this tournament that Australia, the high performance system in Australia kind of conducted for Karnataka, and then New Zealand A played, Australia A played, and we played. And we played the first couple of years, and then they started sending India A over there. So Karnataka played there, and like there it was a very normal part of the culture. Like you finish a game, and they'll even invite you and be like, how do we take part? Like how do we partake in something like this? Because it's so foreign to us, right? But for them, it's like you finish a game, the IC is open, you're just having a chat about the game, and it's very normal.
So Neil Manthorpe wrote a piece this week about it, and he was saying that so Sean Pollock is not a drinker, right? And when Sean Pollock was the captain, and we talk about Australian cricket drinking culture. We don't talk a lot about Zimbabwe or South Africa, right? And they are also very, very high. Zimbabwe might be the most drinking culture of any cricket culture I've come across. They really, really.
That's all.
Yeah, I've got. I won't name the person, but a friend from Zimbabwe cricket said to me once. I was saying, "Is this person an alcoholic?" He said, "The question is always the opposite in Zimbabwe." So Zimbabwe cricket had a lot of alcohol around it for a very, very long time. But Sean Pollock was not a drinker, right? And there have been lots of cricketers from Australia and South Africa and Zimbabwe who are not drinkers as well. But what Neil Manthorpe was saying is some of the teammates were saying, "Do you know what? We don't feel like we can ever like just take him to the bar and relax and talk," which is what you were saying before. That sort of letdown moment, because obviously Sean Pollock doesn't want to be there. The other issue that it quite often creates is people who don't come from drinking backgrounds, whether it be for religious reasons or cultural reasons or whatever that may be. Like, so the cricket club that I played in when I was a kid, Robbie, where we changed was where the bar was. So we had all these young kids who come from, Turkey and Albania and Bangladesh and, all these different backgrounds whose family quite often didn't have alcohol in the house or weren't drinkers or anything. And suddenly they're like preparing to go out and bat with the beer kegs next to them, right? And it was, the whole club was around the bar. Like what the bar did was how successful the club was. And most of the clubs I played with had that element. And so it's a really, really weird situation for a lot of people to come in. And if you do that at professional cricket, if you do that in professional cricket, it's even weirder, right? Because at this stage, you've got there and everything else. And it's all part of it. But as you said, there is and this is one of the things I want to talk to you about, the mental health side of it, right?
Yeah.
Men don't always talk very well unless there is a relaxant involved, right? Or a relaxing situation. And they find it very hard to do that quite often. And that's a part of it. But mental health stuff is also really, really important. But if you drink too much, that also is terrible for your mental health. So it can go in both directions. Yeah. And there are a lot of players, I don't want to name anyone, but I know there are a lot of players who didn't drink at all in their life, got into cricket cultures where everyone drank, and they became terrible alcoholics because they had no drinking role models, right? And they were like
Yeah.
23, 24 years old, professional athletes away from home for the first time. And they end up as raging alcoholics off the back of this. And it probably started with them trying to fit in, right? So there's so many moving parts to the drinking and cricket part of things.
Funnily enough, that's exactly why I didn't drink till I was 25, 26. Till I felt like, okay, I know how to have a modicum of balance with this whole thing, right? For me, till I got to that place, because growing up, things at home were quite volatile. And I knew that it was very easy. And I had this whole thing about, leaning on food. I was a very emotional eater, right? And so when it came to alcohol or smoking or that sort, for me, I was always like, I'm scared I'll over leverage on that side, and I don't know what issues that will bring. So I always kind of stayed away from it till I eventually felt like, okay, I know who I am, and I know how I want to navigate through life, and I know how to have a modicum of balance with this whole thing. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'll start small, and then I'm like, okay, twice a year. And then so that was once after the IPL, and once during that Christmas week, New Year week. I have two big nights, and then that's it, And now over a period of time, I've become like, I think, a social drinker. I'm not someone who drinks all the time, but I'm more a social drinker. I have company, I have friends just catching up, then I have it. But a lot of people who don't come from that culture, it's very hard to figure out, okay, what that is, what the balance is.
Where the balance is, right?
Where the line is, and how to draw that line there, and say, okay, to pick on your priorities, because it really, like, if you've not had a drink amongst colleagues, it sets you free a little bit, right? That your guard really drops, and you feel like, oh man, I can say a lot. Like, you feel the energy is there to actually share quite a bit. And I do think if you over leverage on that side, then it can also cause mental health issues. So self-awareness in this whole aspect is really, really critical.
No, I think a lot of that is
fascinating. For me, I think especially when you're doing badly, when you're not doing very well with your scores, when you're not doing well, then you want to operate from a modicum of being balanced about how much you want to drink. Even if you want to have a drink, then it's also an avenue of release, right, for you. And so because it's an avenue of release, you can actually go and push it beyond where it should be, and then it catches up on you. So we know that if you drink a glass of alcohol, whether it's beer or anything of that sort, it stays in your system for 72 hours, right? So which is why even if you were having a drink during a game, we'd make sure, if I was having a drink, or if I was having a drink during the IPL, I would say, no, let the IPL get over, and then I'll have a drink, because that's anyway going to be in my system, right? So if I'm having a drink, then I make sure that I don't have any matches over the next 4 or 5 days, because that increases lactic acid, that has an impact on your performance. It has a lot of kind of implications. So you don't want that, especially when you're putting so much of an effort on your performances, you don't want that aspect to take away from your game.
Yeah. No, exactly. I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was a county coach was saying to me, he goes, I kind of want all my players to have to come to a communal area at the end. I said, and he was saying, I don't care if they have a drink or not, but I kind of want them to come together and, sit around and chat, just because when you're doing it in the change room and you've just gone out, or you've had a good day or a bad day, he said, but it's more relaxing. He goes, but it's very hard to come up with a system that kind of works, right? Like even food, you have everyone wants a different meal at the end of the day. And, he was talking about during a first class game, some players don't even want to have a big dinner, right? Like, that's not even how they think about it. They don't want to be pulled out. And he was saying the beer is actually the best thing, even for the non-drinkers in the group. Everyone can sit around in a hotel room or, the lobby or whatever, and just have a chat for half an hour before they filter off. So it's all about that balance of bringing it out. And one of the other things you would notice,
there are different ways to do it, Jar. Like a lot of teams, a lot of teams find other ways. You do kind of not tasks, but you kind of do other things together. Say people play cards. People play poker or rummy.
Dominoes.
It's a huge communal thing, right? It just brings people, gaming right now. People sit down and game together, and like there are a bunch of 7-8 guys sitting together. It becomes a communal space. And
so what he was saying is,
then it's just about bringing people together into that space, right?
He mentioned cards, but he said the issue with cards is that quite often players get full on because of the competitiveness that players have. But the other thing he was saying is, and this is what he was trying to work out. This was quite a few years ago, by the way. I'm sure he's worked it out by now. But he was also saying, like, it's actually not that easy to get 12 people together, or 14 people together, or 15 people together.
Yeah, it's not.
Where they don't separate into their own individual groups and everything. Like, there is a reason why these sorts of things happen anyway. It's quite fascinating. The other thing is I wanted to talk about, which is, yeah, I had worked in cricket journalism for 10 years before I started working with teams. And I'm not going to name any names, but I've worked with some proper alcoholics in cricket media, right? Quite often the players are not, there are some players that are proper alcoholics, but quite often the players are what I would call the sort of, I don't know what the official term is, but more binge drinking alcoholics, right? Where they do not drink every day, but when they drink, if they have that gap, they then drink to a point where it is blackout drinking, right? Which we've seen, I think with the England team has been one of the big issues is, you know, all the stories that I've heard from behind the scenes is they get so drunk that they can't do anything, like the Ben Duckett video, right? Where he's that's not enjoying yourself with drinking, right? You've gone well beyond that. I'm not saying that Ben Duckett has a problem. That could have been one night. I don't know everything about it. But looking at that one video, that's the kind of the drinking that causes issues. And so it's very different from the old days of cricket, right? When you had people drinking regularly 2 or 3 drinks after the close of play. And so we've created a kind of different issue, a sort of high performance version of drinking, right? Where people then go out on the, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, right? The sort of players who go out and they have those ridiculous sessions, right? And it almost wipes them out for a week anyway. Like they think they're doing it in a better way. And so, you know, and I've talked to some people in other sports and they've said a similar thing has happened there because having a drink every night is so frowned upon as a professional athlete now. Right, having that they're like, okay, so I won't drink for the 8 days, but in their mind they're like, but on that 9th day, and that's also a bad way of doing things, right? Like that's also not the best way of doing things, especially if you're not from a culture which is used to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and even if you are from a culture, right? You know, you want to have an understanding of at least a little bit of science behind it as to what implications it has on you and what implications it can have on your performance. Because whether you like it or not, you care about your performances, right? You want to go out there and you want to perform well. If not for your team, for yourself, you want to do well. So you care about it. You care about that aspect. So you have to understand the kind of implication it has on your performance. If you have the time for the alcohol to leave your system and not have an implication on your game, then yeah, of course, by all means, go for it. But I've heard stories, man. I've seen people. I've heard stories where people are in the playing the IPL, but they go to play golf, and then while they're playing golf, they're drinking, and they're just it's basically like fear pong golf, or what do you call it? Beer pong golf? It's like that, and it leaves it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth because it has a huge hit on your reputation. But notwithstanding that, the people and the teams that you're representing, it has an impact on that, and the culture that you're trying to build within that ecosystem has an impact on that. So sometimes when you go on this binge drinking sprees, you are often short-sighted about the overall implications that something like that can have.
I don't know if this story is public, so I won't name the player, but there is a famous story of a cricketer who's pretty well known. Like if I said his name, you would know who I'm talking about, who was drinking all night and turned up to a game and went out to bat and realized he was still drunk, played and missed it a ball, and then just walked off saying he nicked it. And it was quite clear to everyone in the ground that he had not hit this ball, but he was like clearly not in the mood to make any runs that day. Like, there isn't, I know that might sound like an extreme example. There was, I think, probably in the 80s and 90s, more of that kind of alcoholism within cricket.
Huge, because cricket is passion then. It wasn't
exactly
a profession, right?
Yeah.
And so then still,
yeah.
And so I've heard so many stories of some greats who've drank till 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, Sobers and both of them, right? Like, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but we did the analysis on Sobers. You remember when the whole thing was that Steve Smith wouldn't sleep during Test matches, right?
Yeah.
And we were looking for how that would affect another cricketer. And the only cricketer I could think of who always talked about never sleeping during test matches was Botham, right? Different reasons to Steve Smith, but no. If you look at Botham's record in the fourth innings of test matches with the bat or the ball, there is a huge drop-off, Robbie. A huge drop-off towards the end. And that's probably because those games in those days, they would have had a rest day. He might have had like 6 days of partying during a game. And then in county cricket, he's got 3 days. He could probably get by in 3 days without it affecting him that much. But once you get to day 4, day 5, day 6, right, it's huge.
Oh my God.
But then you have guys like Garfield Sobers and Michael Jordan, who clearly didn't sleep all that much, who did party all the time. I mean, the great thing about the Last Dance documentary is watching Michael Jordan all the way through with a cigar in his mouth and then going out and still being a better athlete than everyone else, right? Even the guys who weren't drinking and smoking, who were resting correctly. And I think Sobers was probably another kind of guy like that, where his athleticism was such on a different level, it didn't matter. But, you know, it's also different if you're doing it in an era where lots of people are doing it, right? Whereas compared to other players who have had to do it more recently. But it's fascinating to see, you know, that it's still an issue within professional sport and how you do things. There's a famous one, I think it's in Miami for basketball, and might be for baseball as well, that there's like this known thing of like the Miami drop-off. Because if you go to Miami and you spend a night in Miami, every single professional athlete in the world is going out, right? Like they are partying if they're in Miami, like that. You know, it's one of the party cities of the world. And then the next day, there are a lot of players who don't seem to be moving as well as they usually do. Like, you know, these are things that people understand. But it'd be fascinating now with Harry Brook obviously being made the captain for the World Cup and everything with everything that's going on there. And you know, they've got it's a very interesting situation. The way that it's gonna play out over the next couple of years. But no, thanks, man. That was really great to chat to you about that.
Are they sure? As in, is it confirmed that Harry Brook's going to be the one who's going to lead the?
Sorry, I saw half a headline. I thought he was. I thought that was the plan. Harry Brook, World Cup captain. Maybe I'm just guessing that he's going to be.
No, World Cup. I think he is. But beyond that.
No. Well, I mean, who knows? We don't know anything about English cricket at the moment, Robbie, because if they don't win the World Cup, like, who knows what's going to happen after that, right? Like, there might be a lot of positions available within English cricket, I think, at that point.
Strange.
I wanted to talk to you about something else. I don't know if you saw this game the other day. Did you see Nadine de Klerk do her work in the Women's Premier League?
Dude, she's like Michael Jordan's a freak of nature. This woman is something else, man.
I don't think anyone has ever compared Nadine de Klerk to Michael Jordan, but that's what you get on KimAppa. So
no, in the sense, like how when you pull something like that off, like what you need 4-6 in 4 balls.
Yeah, so they needed 18 off the last over. The first 2 balls she mishits and they don't get any runs off them. And then she goes, I think it's 6-4, isn't it? The second 6, Robbie, Siva Brunt sees her backing away and follows her. And she's basically almost off the pitch, falling over in terms of body control. And then she somehow manages to just shovel the ball over mid-wicket. And I was watching, there were 3 generations of people in the room. It was my dad and my son. And we all came in when we heard it was close to watch that, right? And everyone had like a completely different reaction. Like my son was like, oh yeah, well she's slogging, so you could do that. And I was like, technically, how do you do that? My dad was like, what has happened to cricket that a woman falling over can hit a 6? Like, what has changed in this sport? That's also, my dad's a bowler. So, you know, he hates batters doing well at his stage. But we were just captivated by her, right? And it's not, she did it twice in the World Cup. She did it against India and Bangladesh, I think was the other one as well, right? Now,
India
the reason I want to talk about it is,
Andhra, I think it was where she just batted again like she was in a mood.
Yeah. So the reason I want to bring this up with you is I thought for a long time she was one of the worst cricketers in the world. Right? I was just like, I don't understand why they keep playing her. Her bowling is not very. There's nothing going on in her bowling. She was batting at like number 7, number 8, and I didn't see anything in her batting that told me that she was going to be anything more than like a number 8 who occasionally hit a 6, right? And I was like, well, her bowling's not strong enough.
People thought maybe not the worst cricketer in the world, but people actually didn't give AB de Villiers a chance for the longest time.
I don't remember that about AB. But I remember about Glenn Maxwell. Glenn Maxwell started for Victoria as a number 8 who bowled off spin, and he basically never bowled, right? And we used to joke as Victoria fans of, is Glenn Maxwell a professional fielder? Like, what is he in the side for, right? But I think with de Klerk, I hope this is the last time I ever do it. It won't be the last time I ever do it. But I think we have to understand that all-rounders do develop at a different rate to everyone else. And that when you're looking at them at the start of their career, the selectors are like, yeah, but if she can bat at number 6 and she can be the 5th best bowler in the side, she's still going to be really, really handy. But as fans, we're like, yeah, but she hasn't made any runs and she hasn't taken any wickets, right? You know, the old bits and pieces Ravi Jadeja thing. And I remember Corey Anderson. So I interviewed Corey Anderson in I think it was the 2017 World Cup or 2013. No, sorry, Champions Trophy. It was one of the Champions Trophies. In fact, it was the same place where I met you, where you were staying in Birmingham. That was the first time I'd ever been to that hotel, was to interview Corey Anderson. And I sat down with him, and I was fascinated in Corey Anderson, right? At that stage, he was still like the big deal in IPL cricket and everything else. And he basically spent the whole time saying, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I feel like I haven't actually earned what I have got so far, and everything is being given to me on potential, and that I haven't been consistent enough, and that my body always lets me down. And he was telling me a story about like when he was picked, I think, for domestic cricket when he was 16, right? And that's obviously not a very common thing in Western cricket culture. We know it happens a lot more in Asia, but it doesn't really happen all that much in Western cricket culture. And he said, from that moment forward, I always feel like I've been like one step ahead of where my cricket has been. Because everyone's like, yeah, but you can smash the ball everywhere and you can bowl left arm seam and you're a big guy and everything. And I realized that essentially what he was saying is he never had a chance to develop, right? Because he knew that he needed to upskill himself to become the player that he wanted to become. But he never actually had that chance because at every age level curve, he was already promoted ahead of where he needed to be. And then the other thing he was talking about is he's like, I'm a big guy. I can't bowl that much in the net, so I can't work on my bowling as much as I want, right? I'm a guy who only is supposed to face 10 to 15 balls a game, so I don't spend that much time in the middle. And I think it's something that I was thinking about with Nadine de Klerk as well, of like, it's very hard for these all-rounders to develop at a young age because they're already trying to specialize in 2 skills, not in 1, right? And that is a really tough thing to do. And if you look at Jadeja, Dan Vittori, Imran Khan, like, lots of different all-rounders there's always an Ian Botham, right? But even if you look at Garfield Sobers doesn't become a seam bowler till he's like 27 or 28. Up until that point, he bowled off spin a little bit. Left arm finger spin a little bit, right? And then when he finally works out cricket, he becomes a seam bowler. The point being is de Klerk is now 25, right? Which is, for men's cricket, that's still quite young. If you're a woman, that's actually probably closer to 28, 29 developmentally for a man. And now she's become that player. It's taken her quite a long time. And I think that's a tough thing for anyone, and I include cricketers in this, to get your head around that the development curve of an all-rounder is quite often very different than a development curve of any other player.
Sure it is. And I kind of agree with you about that. When I look at the journey of, say, a Jadeja even, right? It took a while till he matured into the kind of batter that he could actually be. And I think a lot of that came on the back of his first class performances, and it was very intentional, right? He was very intentional with improving his batting and improving his numbers. I remember when he was making one of his second comebacks, I think, into the Indian team, he's like, I'm not worried about my bowling. I want to score runs and I want to score these kind of runs, Like I'm not happy with hundreds. I want to score double and triple hundreds. That was a thinking with which he kind of existed in 1 or 2 seasons. So you can kind of, yes, there is the pathway is slightly different, but you actually can kind of shorten it if you are intentional with what you do. Now, for example, if you take the Corey Anderson example, right? He knew he's not going to bowl too many overs. He knows he's going to bowl 4 overs probably in a one-day game. So what does someone like him do? If he knows that he's going to bowl 4 overs in the game, 5 overs in the game, then he needs to practice bowling 8-9 overs in his practice, right? Consistently keep that going. so that when you go into a game, then 4 overs seems like easy peasy, because you've prepared for 8 overs, but you get bowling only 4 or 5, so it's great. So you kind of set yourself up there. Then you know where you're going to bowl. So you know in those 8 overs that you practice in bowling, what exactly do you practice? If you're going to bowl in the death, you're going to bowl in the middle overs. Okay, are you going to bowl cutters? If the wickets or the practice wicket is in a certain way, it's swinging. Okay, what swing am I going to bowl? So you have to bowl with the semi-new ball. Like I have to bowl first or second change. What do I bowl on a track that's helping me? Bowl the in and the out swing, and you kind of get that going. So you kind of train those skills. So then that's targeted practice. If he knows he's only going to bat 14, 15 balls, then you bat at least 60 or 70 balls in the nets, and you bat exactly what you want to do in those 14 or 15 balls to be most effective, right? You do targeted practice and intentional practice that kind of develops you over a period of time. That's the only way, I think.
But that is a really professional thing that you've just said, right? And what we're talking about with people like Jadeja, de Klerk, Corey Anderson is they are quite often promoted before they're even ready to kind of start to figure those sorts of things out. And I think what Corey Anderson was saying is, and he might have been doing what you were saying, right? But what he was saying is, I didn't get a chance to play lots of List A games where I could work on my skills so that I had faced more balls because I was already playing for New Zealand, right? So I'm learning about my game, and he's got 2 skills, not 1. I'm learning about my game at the international level, and I'm not actually that developed in the first place. So I think everything you've just said is what you do, right? Once you get to 25, 26, 27. At 20 and 21...
But that's the thing. But that's the thing, right? Now, even if you're 20 and 21, like it's a matter of perception. This is where people need to have a sounding board that they can actually have a conversation with, where they have honest conversations. Like, yes, this is what's happened with Corey Anderson and Nadine and say a Jadeja, right? But I'm sure there are a bunch of youngsters today who's probably listening to our podcast, or someone's uncle who's listening to our podcast, right? But then they hear this and they're like, hey, why don't you try this at practice? Maybe this is a way you can upskill yourself whilst you're playing. If you're going to be pushed and promoted as an all-rounder, right? Then this is a way you can actually upskill yourself whilst you're even there, right? 100%. It's a matter of perception. Like, if I'm playing international cricket and I'm earning X amount of money, and even though I'm probably one scale below where I desire to be at that level, would I rather be there and upskill myself, or would I drop myself 1 or 2 levels, drop my earnings also by 1 or 2 levels, and upskill myself at that place, right? If you have the luxury of backing, my thinking is, right, take it, and suck it up and figure out a way to kind of upskill yourself.
I get that, but your perception is the word I want to go with here, right? This is, as I said, I learn a lot from Corey Anderson, and I've now talked to a lot of players in his kind of situation before. I'm assuming at one stage in your life, well, probably more than one, you have struggled with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Same, right? And most people listening to this will have the same. What I felt was that what happens with all-rounders specifically is that they are pushed well beyond their normal imposter syndrome levels, right? Because they are promoted so much earlier. You could say the same for left-arm pace bowlers as well. But they are promoted so much ahead of where their skills have developed because of what they might do if they come off, right? So let's say you are, a very, very good batter, right? And you've been picked for India at the age of 23, 24. You probably at that stage have just a ton of runs behind you, and you've been, and everything else. If you're an all-rounder, you might have been picked on the fact that you can do both of these things, but you're not completely in charge of them. And it might be that you're a physical all-rounder or a skill-based all-rounder, whatever that may be, but you're not quite there yet. The point I think I was trying to make, and it'd be fascinating to talk to someone like de Klerk. She looks really confident to me and always has, even when she wasn't playing well. I always felt like she was that kind of player. But those kinds of players that I've talked to in the past, there is an element of them being like, I don't think I should be here and I'm not ready. And then over the time, what you just said is that professionalism kicks in, right? And then they start to work it out. And as they mature, they come in. I just think that there's a different curve for all-rounders than there is for specialist players, because you can't spend as much time working on your batting and your bowling. You could spend I don't want to downplay your wicket-keeping, but you might spend 80% of your time on your batting, right? If de Klerk spends 80% of her time on her batting, right? That only allows 20% for a bowling or vice versa. And if it's 50-50, she's still not spending as much time on either of her skills as a specialist is. So I think there's just a different curve there. And then with teams, as you know, I mean, we don't need to get into Gautam Gambhir here. We know what happens with teams, right, Robbie? They want the all-rounders because it completely changes the whole setup of your side. So you push these people ahead of the curve, right? And then you hope that they are a Ravi Jadeja or Nadine de Klerk type level of steel trap, confident type people. Like Shane Watson was a good example of this, right? Shane Watson, I don't think ever had any issues with confidence, right? Like he might have privately, but certainly not publicly.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
But he was pushed.
But I also think all-rounders, every single all-rounder that ever existed was either a batter who could bowl or a bowler who could bat. It's never like, I think Jacques and probably Gary Sobers, Ian Botham, Andrew Flintoff perhaps, were some of the few who I felt were as good across the board in both skills.
Okay, so let's take that, right? Let's say you're right. That doesn't mean, though, that they are practicing as much as someone else and working on their game as much as someone else. They might not, if they're an all-rounder, they might not even be batting as high up in the order to get as many reps as other players might be, right? No. So even if you're right with that perception, right, there's probably a reason why it takes a long time for Sobers to become a bowler. As I said, you say he was a genuine all-rounder. He was not a genuine all-rounder for the first 5 or 6 years he played in cricket. He was like a fifth bowler, finger spinner for a long time. He only becomes a genuine all-rounder when he's mature.
Most all-rounders start like that.
Which is my point again, right? So if you are really talented, and Callis and Botham and Sobers are almost not the kind of players we're talking about because they are genuine freaks of nature. Even Jadeja is on the edge of that, right?
But even Jaddu was a bowler who could bat and then developed his batting, correct? Look at Hardik even, right?
Yep.
Hardik was a batter who could bowl and then has now developed his bowling into him being, as good as he is as an all-rounder.
And how old is he now? Like 30, 31, something
34?
Around? Oh, is he that old, right? So he's now had the 34 reps as a batter that he now feels like a batter. But at 24, he might have been like, well, they're picking me because I can bowl and I can bat, but I'm not actually sure what my batting is at the moment. And so I was just thinking with de Klerk, and it's like, I've made this mistake lots in my life. So I've got this theory that the way that fans, and sometimes cricketers, but fans look at all-rounders is on the Ian Botham or Derek Pringle continuum. Like you're either the greatest thing that ever happened or you're this crappy bits and pieces player who wasn't any good. But the truth is that it takes a long time for you to develop those skills. And it's funny how often, players like, it just takes a while for the player to work out how to make it work on either side of the ball. Right. And then you have someone like Sam Curran who was good when he was young. And then that thing went away for a little while and he's having to retrain himself. Right.
Correct. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? I think even say, for example, if you look at, say, the 2005 and 6 Ashes, right, where it was Andrew Flintoff's kind of, he stood out head and shoulders amongst all the bowlers that England had.
Are we going back to the drinking topic?
No, we're not. But in that series, you knew his utility was more of a bowler's than of a batter.
Yeah.
So I think you also kind of as a player are in a place where you get a feel of what your requirement in the team is or what skill of yours is a requirement in the team.
Yeah.
Right. Today, for example, let's look at a Nitish Kumar Reddy. Right.
Yeah.
Today he came into bat when India were 38 overs down, 12 overs to go. Rahul was batting on 40. Jadeja just got out after 60-run partnership with Rahul. India were about 195, 96 for 5, I think. And then that's when he came into bat. He scored 20 odd or something, but I think he was stitched on a 70, 80-run partnership with KL Rahul. KL got 100, right? Now, did he do his job? Like, I think today's innings would be a learning innings for someone like him because today, we know he's got the potential as a batter. We know he bowls medium pace, but both are underprepared yet, right?
Yeah.
But right now, he's in a place where he can say, okay, I'm going to focus on being a solid batter over the next 3 years whilst developing my bowling. Right?
I think he's a really good example of this because you're right. We both believe that he can be a batter and that's what he needs to work on over the next couple of years. And then the bowling, hopefully by the time he's old enough, wise enough, he'll find a way to make it work, right? The issue is that he's batted at number 8 as well. And that's kind of what I'm saying is there are games where he was kind of playing as a bowler. And we both know that he was kind of in the side as a bowler at that point. And so that, again, fucks with your head, right? You don't know what to do in that situation. I just think it's not as solid a system as being a specialist because of what you can do in the side. I just think it's far more fascinating. Just looking at Flintoff.
This is very nuanced, yeah.
Yeah.
This is very nuanced, you know.
After, let's see, he played 80 test matches, right? And after 20 test matches, he's averaging 20, right? And he ends up averaging 32. So without doing the maths, he did very well in the second half of his career and he becomes a batter again, right? And it's the same kind of pattern that we're talking about, right? So if you play Flintoff as a batter when he's young, he's going to look really, really poor, isn't he? He's going to have, a long time. And you look at Mitchell Marsh's record, right? You probably would have played against Mitchell Marsh in those Karnataka games back in the day.
Huge.
Right? We both know how naturally talented Mitchell Marsh was from a very young age, right? But Mitchell Marsh kept getting picked for Australia because he was an all-rounder. And at one stage, I think he had the lowest batting average of a top 6 player who played so many tests, certainly for Australia. I don't know if it was worldwide, right? And that's because they kept picking him because he was an all-rounder, but his batting wasn't ready for Test cricket at that point. Like he didn't have what he needed. And we know that years later he worked it out a little bit better and he could do some things. But at that stage he hadn't worked it out. I just think it's a fascinating topic. And with de Klerk, I think that shows what happens when it gets to the level where we're like, I'm looking at her now going, could she be like the Klusner for this women's side, right? Where she just finishes these games and is good enough to be the 5th bowler, right? And is, and is smart. She's also, I know, let's just get back to it for a minute. She is like one of the most competitive cricketers. She competes over every single ball. She's got that.
I've heard.
I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of another cricketer. It's like every single ball matters to her so much. So that sort of Kohli-like thing in her eyes of like, no, you can't beat me for one delivery.
Yeah. I've actually seen that in her eyes. I've seen that, like the ferocity that you want to that you see in an athlete that makes you feel like, hey, this one's slightly different. Nadine de Klerk's actually got that.
No, it's great to watch her again. All right, we'll move on to some super chats. Jessica says, keep up the good work. To be fair, Jessica sent this at the start, so I don't know if we did good work in this one. So I hope we kept up the good work. But big thanks there. Supra says, if a right-hand batter who is right eye dominant, what shot is he or her equipped to play versus the other way around? Does that make sense? So you're right eye dominant, but it's your left eye facing the...
So there are a couple of things. If you're right eye dominant, then so your right eye captures most part of what's happening. And I think the left captures the depth perception happens with the left eye. Yeah, so it's you try not to think a lot about it when you're batting. But I think going in a little time into my career post having my depression episodes and all of that, the stress impacted I lost a lot of hair, and then it had an impact on my eyes, and I wore lenses for batting for the longest time. And so in that, you realize, and that's when you kind of think about, okay, depth perception and what kind of powers have what kind of impact on your eyes, right? So I didn't have spherical vision. Like I wasn't short-sighted. Mine was more cylindrical. Astigmatism is what they call it. So with astigmatism, it's like your eyes shrivel a little bit. So it's like you can see at the top of your eye, you can perceive depth well, but in the middle part of your eye you can't, and then at the bottom part of you can again perceive depth well. So you kind of miss one part of you tracking the ball, so as it's coming to you. So you kind of read into this stuff a little bit as you kind of navigate through any of some of these issues that you go through. I think it doesn't, like for someone who's right hand dominant, I don't think the shots are dependent on the dominance of the eye. I think it's dependent more on the dominance of their technique. How they are holding their bat. What is their natural biomechanics like? I think the eyes give you the ability to make the best decisions based on the technique you have, and I don't think the eyes can decide what shots you can or cannot play.
Without wanting to plug my book, Robbie, but obviously while always plugging my book.
Yes, The Art of Batting. he's spoken so much about the eye and depth perception in that book.
There's a section in it that I found that I think it was like a dentist or something who had done a study into one-eyed batting stances compared to two-eyed batting stances, which is, I suppose, what would you say, like a Shiv Narayan Chandrapal style compared to a more side-on classical kind of style.
So
And
I
it's-
had that, right? Because I was
Yeah.
far side on for a long. So I would look like this. But the minute I started looking at, open my stance up a bit, I started perceiving the ball and seeing the ball so much better.
And he's kind of saying the opposite in this. But remember, we're not saying he was right. But it's fascinating that this was in the 1920s that people have been talking about this. There's also quite a bit in the book from Dr. Cheryl Calder, who's worked with so many professional batters, specifically about the eyesight. And there's a whole chapter about the stigmatism. And I think that's what, so Ross Taylor had a growth in his eye. And that was what was causing the issue. So all of those sorts of things. But it is fascinating. But I think I'm with Robbie as well of, I don't think the eye dominance changes where you hit the ball. I think that is more to do with your natural swing patterns, if that makes sense, and how you hold the bat and probably how you can score, right? Like if you look at someone like Weatherald, he's holding the bat to hit the ball square on either side. I don't think his eye is making the impact there. It's the fact that he's set up to play the cut shot or the pull shot.
Yeah.
Michael DiVenuto is another guy that I remember that was like that at the start.
Why not 3 or 2 or 4? I think... I don't know.
It was 2 stumps.
Sure, as good as me.
It was
2 stumps, and the middle stump, there was no middle stump.
There was no middle stump, and then they started realizing that was ridiculous. They did look at 4 stumps, and they have actually, I think they've changed the size of the ball and they changed the size of the stumps at various times. They eventually found that this was probably the best method, but it did take about 100, 150 years to develop to that point. I think the best question is how they worked out that the bails was the best method to work it out, because baseball was still doing it subjectively up until 3 years ago, and in cricket it's like no, you have to knock the bails off. I love that.
What do you mean baseball were doing it subjectively?
So
What's that supposed to mean?
So in baseball, to tell if a ball is an out or a foul, essentially what the referee, the umpire does is they have to say if it's between your knees and your chest or what, I can't remember the exact height, and then also then you've got the width, right? So they're just making subjective calls. And when they got the data, Robbie, they realized that really good catchers, you're going to love this fact, really good catchers in baseball would frame it with their hand position to make it look like it was inside the strike zone, not outside the strike zone. Right. And so much so that teams worked this out and started paying catchers lots of extra money who had that skill. Right.
And it was ability to manipulate the way they caught the ball.
And it was only when Hawkeye, there's another system that they used, I think, before Hawkeye came in, that actually for the first time ever in baseball, strikes were called correctly. Whereas in cricket, from the moment we put those bails on, we basically set up a pretty good system. Right? It's not infallible. Obviously, the bails don't always fall. Me and Robbie will give you plenty of stories when we've been playing in games where a guy's been clean bowled and for some reason the bails have not come off. Right? I was wicket keeping one day, Robbie, and the ball hit the stumps and it went past second slip. And we all just turned around and we turned back and the bails just didn't move. Like it was just like...
I've been in a first-class game where the ball has gone through the wicket.
Oh, I know. It's crazy.
Through the wicket, and the bails is just sitting there on the stumps.
You would have seen the ones too where the bail goes up and then comes back down. And you're just like, how has it managed to fall back in the right spot? So
I have
the point
seen one
being
game.
It's still a better system than baseball had.
I've been in one game where the bat has landed on top of the stump like that, on top of the bail, right? As he's taking the bat out, the bail's moved. But then he's moved the bat in to put the bail into the groove and then done that.
Oh my God. Crazy. How would you feel if we didn't use bails in professional cricket anymore? Because we don't need them anymore.
Yeah, we don't. But it's there since it's... What's it
I'm
called?
just saying, it's a fascinating one, isn't it? Because now, especially that we have the new bails, it's actually a kind of a nice marketing gimmick, but they also don't always come off in the same way that the wooden ones did.
They don't.
So
they absolutely don't. They're very heavy, by the way. They're made out of plastic or fiberglass or whatever, but they're very heavy because the tech inside or whatever the hardware they use inside is quite cumbersome, I suppose. And talking about stumps, by the way, I used to practice with 4 stumps, right, for red ball. So I'd have all the 3 stumps and I'd have my 4th stump outside the off stump. And so that would become my measure of, and I kind of place it maybe one stump behind, like in the sense, so on fourth stump, but not in the same line of my stumps, slightly behind my off stump, right? Maybe 3 inches behind, 4 inches behind my off stump. So I use that as my, like if I was leaving the ball well in red ball cricket. So if it hit that stump, then I knew that if I was able to leave the ball and the ball hit that stump, and you knew the delay in the distance, because when you leave a ball, you know how long it'll take to hit the stump, your stumps, right, to get cast or to get bowled. But this is because it's 3 to 5 inches behind the off stump. You know the delay, and so for me, it was a great measure by which I used to practice to the red ball to actually leave the ball well.
No, fascinating.
You just zoned out.
I know. I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I was wondering how many stumps it would take for me to be good at cricket. Like that was what I was thinking. I was like, if I have one stump, because the problem for me has always been once the ball is in my arc, like as in straight at me, I just want to smash it, right? But of course, I am not good enough to be able to do that. And I was thinking, if I only had one stump, would I be able to protect the one stump? That was my whole thought process while you were talking of like because this is my point being is. We could talk about this with tail enders, and with maybe Steve Smith is a 6 stump player, right? Yeah. And then you've got maybe Glenn McGrath is like a half a stump player, like he would need half a stump. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, that's a whole different thing. We might have just invented a whole new thing there, me and Robbie. Arnav says, one thing about English cricket is how much it runs on extremes. From 13-14 in your Hole in the Bucket article describes a dour corporate setup to 25-26 Bazball's party scene. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. I did a post on social media a few years ago saying that England was the most interesting cricket team in the world. And you can imagine people who hate England just went ballistic. Because if you write the word interesting, no one ever reads the word interesting. They always read it as like dynamic or whatever. And I'm like, no, interesting could also mean shit, right? And if you look at the extremes that England have had over the last few years, like for instance, like the whole thing of like Strauss, Cook, and Trott, they were money ball batters, right? And the whole thing was to get the bowlers as tired as possible. That was their whole theory. It came from baseball. They brought it over and everything else. All the way through to now, which is Zach Crawley's entire job is to fail and get champagne and cigars, right? Like things have changed so dramatically, but they've done that all the way through. Liam Plunkett, right? Liam Plunkett basically changed the way that people bowl in the middle overs of one-day cricket, right? You know, all these sorts of things that they've done. They do swing in the last, since 2010 to now, they have played so many different kinds of cricket, England, on a moment-by-moment basis. It is actually fascinating. And maybe it's because of the 60 years of being relatively ordinary and everyone else catching up to them and going past them and playing more interesting cricket. But suddenly, like, everything England does is like one extreme or the other. Like, do you remember when before McCullum got involved and Bayliss was the coach, and he was just like, I just go out there and just whack it. Just play your natural game. It wasn't even like Bazball. It wasn't even structured. It was just like, you know how to hit fours, go and hit fours. Like no one else in the world is thinking that way at that point. And it changes one-day cricket, right? That whole structure of one-day cricket changes off the back of what England does. But they get things really, really right. And then they manage to get them really, really wrong at almost the exact same pattern.
Yeah. Like when you look at, say, the 2022 World Cup, you saw them play a brand of cricket through the entire tournament, and in the final, then you had a Ben Stokes who played a run a ball 50 and won the tournament for them.
Yeah,
it's.
I think that really. By the way, I think that innings really screwed with India's heads as well, because they were trying to play that kind of cricket all the way through the tournament. Then they lost to England, and then England went and played the same brand in the final. And it's like, and that's the thing. Sometimes, like, you go back to the Headingley 19 thing of Stokes. Is Stokes himself is one of the most extreme cricketers in both directions that you can ever see, right? Like he is so. Like, he's an impact bowler who can also bowl 12 over spells, right? Like, nothing about him makes any sense.
Yeah.
Vaishak says, should T20 have a manager like football? Tests, ODIs, coaches. We're going to talk about this in a future podcast, Vaishak. But I'm going to remember this comment because I think it's really, really interesting. I have a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah,
But
let's give credit to Vaishak when you bring this up then.
yeah, I don't know if we can bring it up for the other video, but we'll certainly mention his name. I say that, and I forgot to write down his name. But yeah. Oh, why can't I get the next one up, Robbie? Oh. Abalash says, case in point being Prithvi Shaw. A bunch of failures at a young age led him turning towards alcohol. That's another thing that we didn't talk about in the alcohol discussion, right? Is that it is a crutch for people who have issues in their life anyway, right? And so if you're a public figure who is already being exposed to alcohol, probably when you're not used to it culturally, and I'm not saying being used to it culturally is a good thing either. I could tell you plenty of people who grew up with alcoholic parents who have the same issues. But if you suddenly become a public figure and then alcohol comes in, it's probably the worst case scenario, I would think, at that point.
100%. And I think he's still very talented, by the way.
No, I think people have forgotten how good he is because of everything that has followed.
God, he is so good. Still so good.
Oh,
I sure hope he gets I sure hope he gets to open the batting with KL Rahul in the IPL for Delhi Capitals.
Yeah, such a brilliant striker at the ball. Arnav says, is this extreme nature part of England cricket DNA? They invented bodyline. They always formulate a method and follow it through the logical endpoint. So there's an interesting thing here, which is that New Zealand and England have probably always been the most theory-led cricket cultures, right? In New Zealand, they always said it was because that they were never ever professional. Like, even in Asia, you could get a job, for a company and play cricket all the time. And in New Zealand, you were never ever professional, and so they all came with different ideas from different walks of life, right? That was the way that they always saw it. And the fact that they don't have as many players, so they have to come up with theories, right, to beat the best teams. And in England, I've always heard that it's about the fact that for 6 months of the year, they basically all they do is drive, stay in hotels together, and play cards when it's raining. And so there's this theory in English cricket that 6 or 7 months of the year is so intense and they're all with each other that they end up talking about cricket a lot more than some other cricket cultures where you go back home, right? Where you have space between games, right? And everything else. Yeah, I don't know if
I don't think that holds true anymore.
No. I'm talking traditionally. Yeah. No, I'm talking traditionally back in the old days when cricket was a very different sport. So up until the 80s, that was the theory of why, because Australian cricketers could never understand why English cricketers sounded really smart about the game, right? Came up with all these theories and didn't play very well, right? Whereas Australia didn't have that many theories, right? Australia was very simple the way that they played cricket. The ball comes down to you. Are you going to hit it for 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? As simple as that. Whereas England is like, oh, you're good at this. And do you remember that? Remember when Steve Smith got really good and everyone in county cricket, Robbie, took an off-stump guard, right? And the whole Sky team lost their minds at this, right? That I can't imagine another cricket culture where that happens.
Yeah, when that happened, I was like, what is this? Like, what is this thinking?
Yeah. So I do think it is a theory-driven cricket culture at times, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's a very experimental cricket culture, right? I mean, if you compare that to Sri Lanka.
Experimental.
Hey?
They are experimental.
No, last 15 years, but I mean traditionally over the history of English cricket, they're not known for being experimental in a way that Sri Lankan cricket has always been known with experiments, right? From the moment we've known about Sri Lanka, they've always been trying things. So there's a lot of conversations in English cricket, and maybe the last 15 years is them wearing their freak flag, right? And just being like, yeah, we're going to try everything. I completely forgot about this, but actually says the all-rounder conversation feels very relevant for the discourse surrounding Cam Green. I should have sent you this, actually. I forgot about this. Remember Will Pekoski, the guy that unfortunately had to retire very early and obviously would have been a very good player. He was doing like a podcast on Channel 7 or something, and he was going through like Cameron Green piece by piece of explaining why people shouldn't be getting on his case. And it was really good to see someone really think about these things a lot. But Cameron Green is another perfect example of Cameron Green is what, 6'6", 6'7", right, Robbie? You would have faced guys who were 6'6", 6'7". Generally, they find one length and they bowl that length for the rest of their life because it is very hard to hit someone off a length once they are that high. Cameron Green, especially if you're fast, right?
Yeah.
Cameron Green in one over can bowl 6 different lengths, Robbie. and he does it over and over again. And it absolutely does my head in. But I also know that he's still developing, right? And
Yeah,
that one
he is.
day
He's
he's
still
going to
young.
work it out. He hasn't bowled that
Yeah.
much in cricket, right?
No. Yeah. I think and that's the say. So we know now Cam Green is a batter who can bowl, right?
Yeah.
And he's a developing all rounder. Right? I think conversations like this also put into perspective, where a player is and what part of his career he's going through at this point in time. So I think a lot of these narratives are also supportive in the likes of, say, players like Cam Green and all-rounders such as him, because it puts into perspective, and then the true fans and the aficionados of the game understand that, okay, this person's going through a journey, he'll be a finished product in a while. It's not going to happen today.
He has, I'm just having a look here, he has bowled 6,500 deliveries in professional cricket so far. And he has made, about 8,000 runs. So he's faced more than double the amount of balls he's batted. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, so sorry if I got the numbers wrong, everyone. But he's faced basically double the amount of balls that he's bowled so far in his career, which, again, tells you about development and everything else. And now I'm talking to myself as Robbie's just taking a quick break. He'll be back in a second, I'm sure. And he says, since so much of batting is subconscious, how does video analysis of mystery bowlers translate to playing them without being able to face them regularly? Essentially, what you were trying to do, and Robbie's much better at this than I am, and I'm sure he can. Do I need to add him to the stage? There he is.
No, I'm fine. I don't know what happened.
Don't. Essentially, what you were looking at doing at a certain point as a player when you can't pick a bowler is you were looking for cues that allow you to naturally pick them up earlier so that it becomes subconscious later on. Is that the best way that you would put it? Because you've talked about this with Malinga before. Once you worked out the cues that you needed for Malinga, right, it became subconscious after that.
Yeah, I think it is subconscious, and I think it's about training your conscious so well that the conscious becomes a subconscious kind of endeavor and process when you get into a match situation, right? When you get into real time. So a lot of practice is about training your conscious mind to the extent where you can trust it to operate as your subconscious. So because what you built consciously is the muscle memory which sits in your subconscious.
Abhilash says, how helpful is a middling bat? What happens to the balance of the main bat after you use a middling bat? A friend of mine lost touch this year. I think you'll find that Robbie loves the middling bat. He is Mr. Middling Bat.
Yes, I absolutely adore the middling bat, simply because I suppose for me, the way it helped me was that it gave me a lot of
I thought you were moving so you could show us, like, you were
show something.
a middling bat. I thought you just had one in the corner of the room.
No, I didn't. So I think the middling bat for me helped me with a couple of aspects. One is you use the middling bat to actually play closer to your body, to develop good habits, right? To understand where you have the most control and in what range you have your most control. Because certain batters have, like Travis Head, his most control is when he's hitting the ball within himself and slightly ahead of himself. Someone like an Abhishek Sharma has most control with his long levers slightly far ahead of himself.
KP.
Right? Yeah, KP ahead of himself, right? So that's when they have most control. So it depends on your levers and how you use it, right? So for me, I found the middling bat very useful to play close to my body and to understand, okay, what my range was. That's what I used it as, right? And then when I moved, I always made sure that my middling bat was as heavy as my match bat, if not heavier.
I was just about to ask that question. I'm glad that you said that. I was fascinated.
So the
because
middling
otherwise
bat
you would ruin your
always has
swing,
to be,
right?
Yeah. The middling bat always has to be heavier, if not as heavy as your regular cricket bat. So then when you switch from your middling bat to your regular cricket bat, it feels like the same weight, but it feels like you have so much more of a bat to play with. So then your range actually improves slightly. And if you can stay self-aware in that process, you start hitting the ball so much better and your confidence just kind of grows exponentially. So for me, that's how I use the middling bat. And I used it purely to play defensive cricket and within myself.
Again, I was starting to think about how I would use the middling bat. And other than the fact I wouldn't hit the ball, like I would just be trying to slog. Abe says, any memorable times playing against AB de Villiers? How do you keep to someone like him who moves around the wicket so much before the ball is delivered?
Annoying. It's very annoying because he moved quite a bit, and you always had and he also stepped out quite a bit. So you had to kind of be ready, and you always felt like, and he stepped out so late, man. That's one of the things he did. He stepped out so late that you always felt like you have to be on your toes to dismiss him in case he misses it. So you always, and being him, say I think post 2013, 14, when he became the AB that we all know and love, you felt the pressure, right? Like if you don't want to miss his stumping, you don't want to miss his catch, right? So as a wicketkeeper, you want to keep your head as still as possible. So someone who's covering your line and you can't see the delivery, you just tilt your head on one side, or you just kind of keep your head level and just kind of push your head to the side to see when the ball is delivered out of the hand and what he's bowled, and then you can move and trust your instincts to move accordingly.
Andy says, what does the term downswing mean? What are the attributes you're looking for when scouting a batting prospect for T20?
What does the word downswing mean? So basically, Praveen sir says this about downswing. He says, if your action is correct, then the reaction will be perfect. So basically, the downswing is the opposite of your backswing. So when you're standing with your bat in your hands, and you're preparing to play a ball, your hands generally tend to go back to create power, to create room to play the ball. So if you do that well enough, then the bat coming down onto the ball is called the downswing. So it's like a pendulum. You want it to be like you're rocking a baby, as in think of it as that. As the most basic part of it, like as the most kind of first principles part of it.
Yeah.
Right. Now with the way cricket's played, earlier you want to hold the baby close to your chest or close to your waist. Now you want to hold the baby slightly away from the waist, so you have access to different areas, right? Because you have lesser time, so you want to make up for time because you're playing cricket so much more aggressively. You're trying to hit to so many different angles, so you want to hold that baby slightly away from yourself so that you have the range for the bat to move around you to access every part of the ground. What am I looking for in a batting prospect for T20 cricket? I'm looking for someone who has the ability to score runs, one at a quick pace, but with intention. There is a process, there is a mindset behind how he scores his runs, how he paces his innings. You'll find everyone playing big shots today. Everyone can hit a six today. You're hitting a 70 or 80 meter six. I think any young man can do that today. Any young kid with a certain amount of power can do that today. But the ability to score runs in a way that produces results is what you want to be looking at as far as a batting prospect is concerned.
One of the biggest things I'm looking for is repeatability. Is this something that can repeat over and over again, and can it work in multiple places? Because if you don't have that, there are lots of people who could slog over the leg side, but that's not always the most repeatable shot over a long period of time. That's it. Us done for another KimAppa. Thank you to
That's it.
It's it. We keep putting the same comment up over and over again, but we did answer it. We'll be back very soon. We've actually got another episode that'll come up in a couple of days as well. Won't be live. It will be pre-recorded. We may or may not be wearing the exact same clothes, but we will see you again on for another KimAppa. Please subscribe to Combox, all the different places you can find Combox, and very, very soon we'll give you more and more information about that. But at the moment, we're just going to finish here with Robbie's soulful close-up on his camera, and we'll see you again next time. Cricket has never finished at the close of play. It lives in the arguments, the memories, the comment sections. Cricket makes you talk. Combox is entering that chat.